Previously in Dark Places.
About 6 feet in front of her is this 6.5, 7 foot tall, hair-covered creature, Bigfoot. And as soon as the light went on, it put its arm straight up over its head, and she pulls the trigger and shoots right into it. She said there's this bright flash of light, like a strobe on a camera, and that huge hairy creature physically disappears right in front of her.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the show. Howdy, howdy. You're in for a real treat this week. We have Mr. Terry Lovelace. He's got a really fascinating story to tell. Terry's been just about everywhere lately. He's been on dozens of podcasts. We're really happy to have him here on ours this week. If you got a creepy tale to tell, we'd love to hear it. Email us indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. Terry Lovelace is author of Incident at Devil's Den and Devil's Den: The Reckoning. Terry, welcome to the show. I know you're probably getting sick of telling your story over and over, but do you care to run our listeners through it?
I'd love to. I'd love to tell them about my abduction experience from 1977. That was really a major event in my life. In 1977, let me give just a brief bio of who I am. I'm Terry Lovelace. I was born in 1955. In 1973, I graduated from high school and joined the Air Force right away and spent the next 6 years on active duty at Whiteman Air Force Base in western Missouri. And in 1977, while on active duty, I went down to Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas, northwest corner of Arkansas. And a buddy and I went remote camping. We were in the wilderness. We didn't stay at a campsite. And there's kind of a long backstory behind that, but I'll kind of get to the meat and potatoes of the story. We wanted to be real outdoorsmen, right? And interesting, neither one of us had ever been camping before. You know, we were both city kids, never been camping before, and now we're going to be real outdoorsmen, right? So we're in my old '66 Impala, and we come to this chain across the road. And this sign that says, warning, do not keep out, no admittance, no hunting, camping, hiking, fishing, blah, blah, blah. And I knew we were trespassing, but I thought, we're going into some kind of nature preserve, we're not going to leave trash around or start a fire or, not burn the place down at least. We're going to be respectful of the property, but... So we got around this. There was a chain across the road, but what they had done was these park rangers had taken this chain and a padlock and did a loop and locked it, and then draped it over the opposing post on the opposite side of the road. And my friends, I was going to turn the car around. My buddy's like, "No, I got this, man." He hops out of the car, picks up the chain, and just drops it, and it falls to the ground. And we're like, woohoo, we're in, we feel like Lewis and Clark. Man, we are really good to go. And we drove in, and the road degraded to just a dirt road. And my friend did the navigating. And we ended up at the base of this plateau that you had to drive your car up this dirt path. And then this beautiful meadow opened up. And this top of this plateau was level with the treetops of the surrounding forest. So you can't even see this place until you're right up on it. So we're giving each other high fives, and we're thinking, wow, this is great. We got this whole place to ourselves. And my buddy, Toby, his interest was the night sky. And he just... And I wish I'd asked him back in the day, where did that interest in the night sky come from? But man, this guy could name constellations, and he could time when a satellite would come over, and that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to study physics and then go on and study cosmology or astronomy. And I was there because I wanted to photograph wildlife. So we set up a little camp, and we did the fun stuff you do when you camp, and burn some hot dogs and that kind of stuff. And but it was all new to us. So, it was fun. And that evening we were sitting around a campfire, and we got these inflatable air mattresses. We bought 2 inflatable air mattresses and a 2-man tent with a floor at Kmart for like $9, all of it. And so we set up this tent, and we're on these air mattresses, and we're just kind of kicked back and relaxing. And we got a campfire between us. And we're talking and laughing and having a good time. And then there's a lull in our conversation, and I realize that all the noises in the forest, and this sounds like a cliche, this sounds like something out of a movie, but I swear to God, this is what happened. And that is that this place went dead silent. And it unnerved me. I mean, because the crickets, the tree frogs, I mean, man, they were loud enough that we had to raise our voice to be heard. And now all of a sudden, the only thing I can hear is a campfire. And, it wasn't only quiet, it was still, because we had a nice breeze going. And now the breeze is gone too. So I'm like, man. And I asked my friend, like he's going to know, right? I said, hey, Tobe, is this normal, man? It seems awful quiet out here. And he's making fun of me. He's like, oh yeah, don't worry about the bugs. The bugs will come back. We just quieted them because we were laughing and cutting up. Don't worry about it. No big deal. So I didn't for a while, and he's got his head turned to the left, looking at the western horizon. And he asked me, he says, hey, Terry, were those lights there before? And I'm like, what lights? What are you talking about? I mean, we were in a remote place. I mean, the only light you could see from the top of this plateau was there was a faint little glow of light from the campgrounds that's miles away. And that's it. There's nothing else out there. It was in the middle of nowhere. And I couldn't see what he was talking about because his body was in the way. So I had to stand up. And I saw on the western horizon, there was this cluster of 3 little stars, tight little triangle of 3 stars. And they're sitting too far above the horizon to have been lights like from a train or from a parking lot or something. But they were also, they were static. They didn't move. And I told my friend, I said, that could be an aircraft of some kind. And he's like, no, there's no aircraft with that kind of configuration in the front. I said, no, hear me out. I said that, if that thing's headed directly at us, we can't perceive its motion. We won't see it move until it changes course by a degree or 2. And he says, oh, well, maybe so. So we're watching it. And suddenly it rotated. It rotated like it was on an axis. And it did about a 120-degree turn to the right. And what it did was the base of that pyramid, or triangle, I should say, the base of the triangle aligned itself parallel with the horizon, and it started to move up. And as it moved up into the air, I suddenly felt this, I don't know how else to describe it, but I felt this sensation of calm wash over me. And all of that, I felt unnerved by the silence earlier. That's all gone now. I don't feel frightened. I don't feel unnerved. I feel almost half sedated. And my buddy must be in the same situation because we're watching this thing and we're not talking about it. We're not discussing it. And, we're seeing something pretty incredible. And there's no conversation about it. And while we watched this thing, when it started to move up, it went straight up, and it reached what I call a ceiling, probably 10, 12,000 feet. I don't know. I had no point of reference. But then it changed orientation, and it tipped over so that it was flat. When I say flat, I mean parallel with the earth, with the ground. And it had the point of the triangle pointed in our direction. And then it started this glide, like a glide plane down toward us. And I mean, it was pretty clear it was coming toward us. Now, we should have been freaked out, or we should have been packing our stuff. We should have had some kind of reaction, but we didn't. And matter of fact, I would describe my emotion as almost maybe even disinterest, mild disinterest. It felt like I was just there watching. Felt like more like an observer, like I wasn't a participant in the thing. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know how to describe it, but that's where I was at. That's where my head was at. And as this thing started to descend, it did this thing where the nose or the point of the triangle would dip down and would do a complete somersault. And it did that twice. And I had the impression that it was telling us that, hey, this isn't something out of control. This is something, that's acting with intention and acting with purpose. It knows what it's doing, and it's headed in our direction, right? And while we watch, this thing comes down on the western horizon and levels out at about 5,000 feet above, I'm guessing 5,000 feet over our heads, and then descends as it's coming in across the forest. It drops another 2,000 feet, and it comes to a rest, a park. It parks right over this field, this plateau where we're staying. And thankfully, we had camped off to the side by the tree line, so it wasn't right over our heads. But it didn't make any noise, and it just slid in there nice and quiet and stopped right over this meadow. And it was enormous. I mean, it was like the size of a Walmart.
Wow.
And we're watching it, and what it did was, there, right underneath this triangle and in the middle, it shot down this beam of white light. And it was very similar, like if you ever seen like a high power searchlight cutting through fog, you see a column of white visible light.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what this was like, only it was about a 6-inch diameter beam of light that, like someone hits a switch, it turns on, and this light lands in our campfire. And I look at Toby looks at me, and we look at this thing in the campfire, and we didn't say a word. And I wasn't afraid. I was just not much of anything. And that lasted about a minute, and then it just clicked off like somebody hit a switch again. And then right after that, there came this laser-like light. And lasers were kind of a new concept in 1977. And I'd seen them on television, but I'd never seen one, for real. But I recognized it as a laser. I mean, it was bluish purple. It was about the diameter of a pencil. And it was, this light was like dancing all around the campsite. And it struck me in the chest a couple times. I know it hit my friend. I never felt a thing. And it hit my car, the tent, Toby's cooler, his backpack. All the stuff that we brought with us, this laser light struck, including our bodies. And I'm thinking, this thing's checking us out. It's scanning us. And I'm still, there's no fear whatsoever. And then that light, again, clicks off. And then we're just sitting there in the quiet. And it's as quiet as if you were sitting in a sound booth. Right? The fire's out, so it's just dead quiet. And that's when suddenly I transformed from being sedated to being sleepy. Now, we worked the night shift. We were both EMTs, first responders. We drove an ambulance, but we worked the night shift. Routinely, we worked 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. So this was before 10 o'clock in the evening. We're 22 years old, for God's sake. We shouldn't have been tired, much less sleepy. But man, I was sleepy. And I think this speaks somewhat to the level of influence that these things can have over us. Because I think we were under their influence some sort of way from when we first saw these stars start to move up into the sky. So my friend says, show's over. And he just picked up his air mattress and threw it inside the tent. And I followed suit, and I threw my air mattress inside the tent, and I fell on top of it. I didn't bother to take off my shirt or my combat boots or anything. I just fell on top of this inflatable air mattress. And man, the second my head hit that inflatable yellow pillow, I was out. And I don't think I was asleep. I think I was unconscious. And that's when they took us. That's when they took us, I'm sure. And wow. Some time passed. And I woke up because there were these flashing lights that were like yellow and orange and white. And they weren't in sequence. They were at odd intervals, and they were so bright. It was, man, they lit up the inside of that tent, like a ballpark at night. It was just real intense, but it only lasted for a millisecond. And I wake up and I'm like, I don't have my wits about me. And I'm like, where am I? Oh, yeah, I'm camping with Toby. That's right. And I see these crazy lights coming through the canvas of the tent. And I'm trying to make sense of it. And I'm thinking, well, these must be the overhead lights from a park ranger's truck there to kick us out of the park, because we're trespassing.
Yeah.
And I sat up, and when I sat up, I noticed that my combat boots had been unlaced all the way down. Now, I knew that I didn't do that. I knew that I wouldn't have gone to sleep. I wouldn't have laid down with them in that condition. I would have either taken them off or I'd have laced them up. But I mean, that's a trip hazard. I mean, if you had to, run for your life, you don't want to be tripping on your shoelaces.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. In the military, they teach you to take care of your feet. So that puzzles me. I'm not scared yet. And I took off my boot and my socks are on sideways. Now, I knew it didn't hit me that I had been undressed and redressed yet. But I would never have done that. Never put up my socks on sideways. So I put them on properly. I'm annoyed, And my buddy's on his knees and he's peeking out of the tent and he's looking at something. And I'm like, what is it, Toby? What's out there, man? Is it park rangers? Who's out there? And he didn't answer me, except that he said, he put his finger across his lips, like to be quiet. And he said, I think they're still out there. And I'm like, who's still out there, man? And he's not talking to me. And in one of these flashes of light, I could see, I guess this bright white light, I guess saline in your tears fluoresces under that flash of white light, because I could see tracks of tears down the right side of his face. Now that scared me, because I couldn't imagine what in the world would make this man cry. That really brought me kind of back to reality. And I peeked out of the flap on my side of the tent, and right now, and from that point on, I'm scared to death. And what I saw was these lights were coming from this triangle thing. And what it had done was it had descended from 3,000 feet, and now it's just 30 feet over the floor of the meadow. So thankfully, we're camped just off to the side, so it's not over our heads. But I mean, it's right there, and it's enormous. Like I say, it's the size of a super Walmart, and it's got these flashing lights on each point of the triangle. And I'm watching this thing, and I'm scared to death. And I saw what I first thought were children, maybe a dozen, maybe 15. And I asked Toby, I said, man, what are these little kids doing out here in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere? And he said, Terry, man, those ain't no little kids. They're not human beings. Look at them. So I did. And, we were a fair distance away, and they were underneath this thing that was, 30 feet over their heads, just levitated there. And in one of these flashes of white light, I could see them pretty clearly. And he was right. They weren't human beings. They were the gray guys with the big heads. They didn't have the really exaggerated black eyes like you see in the motion pictures. They were more like sunglasses or something. But it was definitely their eye structure. And just a real spindly, thin torso, long limbs, gray in color. And they walked with a really weird gait. They walked like their knees were hinged to move backward with each step. So when they took a step, they gave this. It looked like they were dragging their leg from behind. I don't know how else to explain it, but they walked funny. And while we're watching, these guys are all over the meadow, and they're paired up. They're like in pairs, and a couple of them are in threes. And they're just walking around and like they're tourists or something, they're not looking on the ground like they're looking for something. And while we're watching, this light, another light from underneath this thing clicks on, and it's that white light again. It has that white light quality to it. But this is a column of white light, about 30 feet in diameter. It's about as wide as this thing is off the ground. And as soon as this light kicks on, these little guys all turn their heads and their attention toward this light. And they started to just, meander over toward it. And they didn't rush and they didn't run, but they just made their way to this light. And like they formed a line, and they would step in twos and threes. And we saw the first two little guys step in to this light, and they just pixelate it out. Pixelate like the old Star Trek thing. I'm not a science fiction fan. My wife used to watch that, and you know, well, what do they call the thing that sends people places? You know, they would stand on these little platforms and pixelate out. It was that kind of illusion. That's what it looked like.
That is creepy.
It was creepy, and we're scared to death. You know, we're scared to death. We're afraid we're going to sneeze or cough or do something to draw attention to ourselves. And we didn't know they were long done with us. You know, everything was over with us. They'd finished with us. So while we watched, the last two little guys stepped into this light and pixelated out. And as soon as they were gone, the lights on the point of the triangle switched from, you know, yellow and orange and white to just white. And it took off. We saw the thing take off. And it didn't take off like a rocket ship. It took off just like a hot air balloon. It just lifted off slowly. And the higher it got, the faster it went. And there was 3 lights in the sky and then 1 light in the sky, and then it was gone. And we were like 2 scared 10-year-olds in that tent. I mean, I did not want to. And I told my friend, I said, you know, I'm not leaving this tent until daylight. You know, I mean, I didn't want to make the 60-foot run to the car because I would feel vulnerable. I mean, all I had over my head in that tent was a piece of canvas, but I felt like it gave me cover. And I did not want to leave that tent. But my friend says, you know, look, man, we got to get out of here. You know, we're inviting trouble if we don't. And he convinced me to go, and we did the 1, 2, 3 go thing. And we darted and we ran to the car. And I'm like, man, you know, can you get me out of here in the dark and without breaking an axle? He's like, yeah, you know, I got this. And he did. He navigated us back, and we finally got to the point where I saw the chain laying across the road, so I knew we were on the right path. And we hit the blacktop and headed north for a 6.5-hour drive back home, back to Whiteman Air Force Base. And we were both in a lot of pain. We were both, I had the worst sunburn I'd ever had in my life. I was red all over. I was burned all over. The soles of my feet were burned. Under my arms, everywhere I'm burned, right?
Wow.
And I was just incredibly thirsty. We found out when we got back that we were both acutely dehydrated. And I had flash burns to the eyes, they called it. It's, you know, what an arc welder gets if they don't wear that hood over their face.
Oh, yeah?
Whenever they weld with acetylene. So I'm like, yeah, we got back, and doctors wanted to know how we got hurt. And but what they did was they separated us. Toby and I, they separated us and kept us apart. And we were ordered to have no contact with one another. And when I told that to Robert Hastings, he's like, oh, yeah, that's real common. He says, they do that. And he says, you know, if 2 guys on active duty, you know, they're on a duty station or something, they're out doing what they do, and they see a saucer dart across the sky, that's usually no big deal. They'll tell them, you know, don't talk about it. But it's no big deal. But he said, if you have he called it an intimate interaction with ET. He said, yeah, they break up those guys, and, you know, they'll send one. And that's what they did. They shipped Toby out to Japan at light speed, man. He was gone in weeks. And, yeah, just a bizarre experience. Changed my life, I'll tell you.
Was that the last time you ever saw Toby?
The last time I saw Toby was we were ordered to have no contact with one another. And I was ordered that the hospital commander, I worked in the hospital squadron, the hospital commander gave me that order. And he said, if you disobey my order, there will be consequences. Do you understand? And I said, yes, sir, because I did. I mean, I understood consequences, but I didn't understand the reason behind it, you know? So I really didn't. It's weird, you know, something changed. We were different people when we left that plateau. You know, I think we went down there like a couple of just teenagers, and we came back. We were adults. And, uh, I can't really reconcile this, but I wanted nothing to do with the guy. And this guy was my best friend. You know, we worked together. Our wives were friends. I was 22 at the time. He was 23. We both lived on the base in family housing. And yeah, you know, and I thought that's fine with me. But I really wanted, what's the word they use? I guess it's closure. I
Oh,
really
yeah.
wanted to wrap this thing up somehow and get some feeling of peace from it because I wasn't at peace with this. And one day coming home from the grocery store, you know, this is like a week before Toby takes off for Japan. I told my wife, I said, stop by Toby's house. I want to run in and tell him goodbye. And she's like, are you sure you want to do that? You know, you've been ordered not to do that. And I wouldn't. And I'm like, look, I'll be in there 4 minutes. I'm just going to go shake the guy's hand, wish him well, and then I'll feel better. Right. So she's reluctant, but she stops. And I get out of the car and I run up to the door. And same door I've walked through 100 times before. And I did what I always did. I knocked 3 times on the door real loud, and I opened it because it was never locked. And I said, hey guys, it's me. And Toby's wife walked by, and she had a lamp or a box or something in her hand. I think it was a lamp. And they were packing. And she looked at me with a hard look, and she said, you're not supposed to be here. And I said, look, I know I'm not here for a confrontation. I just want to wish Toby well. And I hear you guys are going to Japan. And she just went out in the garage. But Toby must have heard our conversation because he walks around the corner from the bedroom, comes up the hallway. I'm standing there in the foyer, right in the entryway. And I was shocked because he was a wreck. I mean, he was one of these guys that was always real meticulous about his appearance. You know, he was the guy who always had a haircut that was within regs and, you know, was clean shaven and had a, you know, freshly starched uniform and shined his shoes and did all that stuff you're supposed to do. And I was a slob, but he was really meticulous about his appearance. And, you know, even if we were playing volleyball or something, and he'd come around the corner and his hair was all wonky and he had a growth of beard and he had on a dirty t-shirt and dirty blue jeans. And I cut him some slack because he's moving, right? But seeing him was upsetting for some reason. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't closure. It wasn't wrapping things up. It was just awkward. And I had the intention for a second, you know, I was going to give the guy a little hug and pat on the back and say, you know, hey, good luck in Japan, you know, have fun. But I didn't do that. And I stuck out my hand at the same time he stuck his out, and we kind of missed. And then we eventually connected and had this awkward handshake. And I said, you know, Toby was about 4 inches shorter than I am. And he looked up at me and he said, it happened, didn't it, Terry? And I said, yes, my brother, it happened. You're not losing your mind. And I looked down at my shoes and he looked back up at me and he said, yeah, but why us? And I said, man, I ain't got a expletive clue. I don't know. I don't have a clue. And I turned and I ran out of the house. And that's the last time I saw my friend.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that is bad. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say he did not do well. He had struggles with alcohol and his marriage broke up. And yeah, he did not have an easy life. I think that I don't think he ever got over this, you know. And I kind of had my struggles too. I got to tell you, I had trouble sleeping. Still do sometimes. I still sleep with a light on. And, just like I was in that tent, didn't want to run that 60 feet to the car because I felt like I'd be vulnerable. To this day, I won't walk across an open field. Uh, I'll walk a mile and a half out of my way to go around it, but I won't cut across open spaces by myself, especially because I feel vulnerable still. So PTSD, I guess.
That is a scary story, man.
Yeah.
I know that you spent a lot of time researching UFOs over the years. This thing that took you guys back in '77, this was a triangle. The triangle wasn't really common in the '70s. Have you found a lot of other reports of triangles during that time period?
I have. There's a guy named David Marler, Marler, lives in New Mexico, lives down in Albuquerque. And he wrote a couple books. I'm looking at my bookcase. I can't remember the name of this book. But he wrote a book on triangles. That's kind of like recognized as he's like the go-to guy for triangle stuff. And, I had my experience with this triangle in June of '77. And the thing that we saw was deep. I mean, it was like 5 stories tall. It was like an office building floating in the air. It was crazy. And there was a woman in the Hudson Valley up in New York who saw a triangle, and she described it in exactly the same words I used. She said it was 5 stories deep.
Wow, that's huge.
So, yeah, it was enormous. So yeah, I think there's triangles that go back to the 1960s, but they're not real common. They're more common. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, they were really common in the '90s, especially.
Well, I had an actual sighting in New Mexico myself, and it was a triangle as well. And it was close enough to me. It was less than 500 feet away.
That's
Yeah.
Intimate. Yeah.
Yes, that was too close. And it didn't do anything really special other than it made absolutely no noise. None. And it flew right over top of me. I was going across I-40 right in Albuquerque, and it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And there was actually pretty moderate traffic. And I know to myself, I just kept thinking, there is no way I'm the only one seeing this.
Absolutely not.
So when I finally made it home, I actually started searching the internet really heavy to see if there was any sightings or reportings in that area, and I couldn't find anything. Nothing. Just like it never happened.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. The thing that my friend and I saw, we were remote camping, so we were in a remote location. We weren't on a busy highway. But this thing was so big and lit up so bright that, it should have been seen in 5 counties. And who knows, maybe it was, but I couldn't find any record of it. It was just insane.
Yeah, a 5-story building's not something you see every day floating in the air. That's surely something somebody should have saw something, for miles away.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I think a lot of the problem is that people don't look up. They pay no attention to what's going on above them.
Are you familiar with the Mothman story up here in West Virginia?
Sure am.
Sent up a red flag there for me. You were talking about the eye flash burn and stuff. There was a lot of reports of the witnesses of Mothman having that same thing.
Oh, I never heard that. I know about the Mothman thing. I've heard the woman who was in the car with her boyfriend. I heard their story. And I know about the Silver Bridge. But yeah, have there been sightings of Mothman in the past 10, 20 years?
He doesn't really seem to hang around here anymore. He's more toward Chicago a lot here lately. They've been seeing some winged figures there, like a Mothman type thing. There are a few sporadic reports of Mothman in West Virginia from time to time, but it's mostly up around Lake Michigan there anymore.
Wow, I did not know that. I did not know that. Yeah, I still got a lot of good friends in Michigan. I should hunt them down and ask them to send me the stories.
It's weird that they had that same eye burn, all those witnesses. It was back like in 1966 here, and there were several witnesses that had that eye burn.
You know what? I'm gonna research that. I've looked that up. Yeah, because I don't know how I got burned so bad. It must have been on the ship, and I was really angry right after this thing happened. And I thought, man, I'd shoot these things if I had a chance. But you know what? And when I look back on it, I don't think that they intended to hurt us. I think it was collateral damage. I really do. And because if they wanted to kill us, they could have just easily killed us. And
yeah,
they didn't. They just kicked us out. So.
Yeah, kind of a wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, either that or, as funny as this sounds, maybe we were at the right place right on time. I mean, this camping trip was just a weird idea. And when we got there, it had the vibe to me like we were keeping an appointment. It had that feel to it. I don't know how to explain it, but it I wonder when I look back at it if somehow we were set up some way. Toby set us up, or the Air Force or ET or somebody. Because it just seems too coincidental the way things played out.
Makes you wonder. That's weird.
Yeah. And the Air Force thought that the Air Force knew I was an amateur photographer. I like to take pictures. And they assumed, I think, that I had a 26 exposure roll of pictures of this thing, which I didn't. God, I wish I did. I'd be talking to you from some island now and not from Texas. But, yeah. While we're watching this thing, Toby's got his backpack a foot away from him. And it's got his camera right on top. And, neither one of us thought to take a picture of this thing. How crazy is that?
I get that a lot on the reports that I get and everything. People will see things, and it's always the immediate thing in the comments on my page on Facebook. Everybody's like, "Why didn't you take a picture?" But I've seen dozens of weird lights and things in the sky myself over the years. I had my first sighting in '92, and that's always the furthest thing from mine. You don't take a picture of it.
No, and it's weird, especially when somebody like me, who photography was my hobby, I make a nuisance of myself because I'm taking everybody's picture all the time, and I can't explain that. So you've heard that story before. People didn't think to take the picture.
Yeah, I see. I see things weird. So often I make it a point to have a camera in the car with me at all times in case I see something, and I'll still see it and never even think about using the camera. Well,
you know what? We're in the same kind of world because I see stuff all the time, and I got some pictures. I have taken some pictures of some stuff, but we were coming out of my wife's eye doctor appointment a couple months ago. And we're in the parking lot, and as we're walking to her car, I saw this woman with her head tilted back looking at something. And I look up, and here's this silver, like, cigar shape. I don't know if it was a saucer or what, but it was an object there in the sky just hanging there. And I say to my wife, and she didn't have her eyes dilated or anything. It wasn't that kind of appointment. And I pointed up, and I said, "Look at that." She said, "I can't see it. What are you talking about?"
Really?
And this woman with her head up, I said, "Madam, can you see that?" And she just turns and shakes her head, yes. And then we watched it, and it just drifted off. But my wife never did see it.
No, wow, that's incredible.
So I wonder, can some of us maybe see this stuff and some of us not? I don't know.
I have that same theory because it seems to affect certain people. Like some people go their whole life and never see them.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
Almost like a selective, I don't want to say type of person that could see it, but maybe it could, I don't know, maybe we're all different and only some of us see it and some of us don't. Or, That's weird to me.
It's weird to me too. And maybe it just shows itself to people that it wants to show itself to.
Sure, and you think about the cloaking devices that our military has. Can you imagine thousands and thousands of advances out? How strategically they could use any kind of cloaking. I mean, now they use mirrors that reflect the stuff behind them. It makes it look like it's in front of them, and you don't even see them. They're invisible.
Yeah.
So can you imagine the technology that they could possibly have, how well they have developed that? So they could be very selective on who sees it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. that never even entered my mind. That's really cool.
In your book, you talked about the monkey men coming in your room when you were little. I kind of wonder, like, that kind of same thing, they project themselves to be like different entities as well.
Well, you know what? In these emails that people sent me after reading my book, I had people email me and say that they saw, when they were little kids, I mean, like 4, 5, and 6, they saw glowing orbs of light in their room, owls, lots of owls, deer, Disney characters, clowns, little clowns.
Oh,
I
that
think
freaked
they
me
can.
out.
Oh, that would freak me out too. But I think they can appear in any form that they think the child will think is most benign, and not freak them out. I really think they can do that. I had this one kid contact me. The mom contacted me from El Paso. I'm in Dallas. So it's all the way the other side of the state, but we talked on the phone. I had to get a translator. She didn't speak English. I don't speak Spanish. But she had an amazing story about a 5-year-old kid. They lived in a trailer, and this kid was screaming in the middle of the night and said that there was a possum that walked on 2 legs and talked to him with his mind. And he could hear him in his mind, but the thing never opened its mouth. And he said it was a big possum, too. It was 2 feet tall. And it would look at him, and they'd talk, but he could never remember what they said. And it would come and go by turning into a ball, or a globe, an orb of light. And, Mom got freaked out. She put on some motion detector lights outside, and light in the backyard, but it kept happening. So she started sleeping on the couch where she could peek into the kid's room and see him. And one night she saw the orb of light come in, and she saw this orb of light just kind of like parked in front of the kid's bed.
Wow!
And the kid screams, and it goes right through the screen and is gone. And she runs in, picks up her kid, and the kid's saying, "Did you see him, Mom? That was the possum. Did you see the possum?" Huh. So that's great.
Well, that would be, we talked to Stan Gordon there a couple of weeks ago, and he was putting UFO sightings together with Bigfoot sightings. And if they are connected, that would make perfect sense as far as being so elusive. It would be seen and then not seen. So if they can mimic other creatures and animals and humans, I mean, that would make sense.
That makes sense. I think you're right. I think there's something to that. I mean, there's just too many incidents of Bigfoot and UFOs that go together. I mean, I got friends that are really, like you and I and Junebug, we're into UFOs. I got friends that are into Bigfoot.
Right.
And I've never seen Bigfoot, so I mean, I've never given it a lot of thought, And but my friends make pretty convincing arguments about it. They got some pretty cool pictures.
I'm a Bigfoot guy myself. I've never seen one, but I have seen a UFO. But now, when I say that, that doesn't mean that I believe that came from another dimension or another solar system. It just means what I saw with my eyes, I could not identify as what I was seeing.
Sure.
It was like 3 tractor trailers parked in a triangle. It's about the size of it. Could it have been our own government? Could have been. I don't know. But I know what I saw. I know what it was.
Yeah. And you're right. It could have been our government, but it still could have been interdimensional or.
Oh yeah. Well, see, that's like me and Junebug talk, and I say this every week. I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse, but with Bigfoot, UFOs, or anything, yeah, I believe some of it's made up, some of it is misidentified, but there's no way all of it is. There's no way.
Not a chance.
No.
You know what else I'm coming to think is that, in the back of my book, I put that email address, and I've had all these people email me with stories and stuff. And I had a couple people email me that read my book who were near-death experience NDE survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And they wrote to me, and this one woman says, "Do you realize how much we have in common?" And I thought, I don't get it. I don't see anything. I don't know what's in common. And she emailed me back and said, "Well, yeah, think about it. You see a UFO, and it's a life-changing experience. I mean, you're going to remember that the rest of your life. You're going to think, I saw something nobody else has seen." And she said, with the near-death experience, it's kind of the same thing. It's a big deal. It's a life-changing experience. And she got me thinking, because she said, you ever consider that maybe like ghosts and Bigfoot and UFOs and all of this stuff has some thread of commonality that runs through it? Maybe it goes back to some point of origin or something. Yeah, maybe there's something in common with all this stuff.
It could all be connected. I mean,
that popped in my mind when you were talking about the whole forest going quiet at Devil's Den. There's a lot of Bigfoot reports I had. When Bigfoot's around, the forest will go quiet. All the crickets and birds and everything stop. So it's freaky. It all ties in.
Yeah. That forest back in '77. This forest went absolutely dead still, and it spooked me.
No, I imagine. Yeah, and you think animals, they have that sixth sense of, when something's around or they feel threatened that we may not even pick up on. It's like, I believe that animals can communicate with one another, maybe not out of different species, but even in their same species. I think they can communicate with sounds that we can't hear.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I used to live on the island of American Samoa. I worked for the government down there for 5 years. And we had an earthquake. We had several earthquakes. It's in an earthquake zone. And we had several, 6.0 range. And this is, it's about on the same latitude as New Zealand. It's about 2,500 miles south of Hawaii. And it's the only U.S. territory south of the equator. And just a little spit of an island. And we had chickens. And they didn't stay in a coop. They stayed. We had a house on the side of the it's a archipelago, whatever you call it. And there was a dormant volcano in the middle of the island, and our house was up kind of on the side of the volcano, so we were up off the beach, and we had every morning we'd go out and feed the chickens. They slept in the jungle. Believe it or not, they slept in the trees and in the bushes. And then they would come down, and my wife would arrive. We'd go out and feed them in the morning. And kind of like pets, really,
right.
A source of eggs. And then also they were pest control, because we had in Samoa, we had those centipedes that were like 8 inches, maybe a foot long.
The main ones.
Poisonous stuff. Yeah, like a snake bite. And one morning, chickens didn't show up. And I didn't think anything about it. And I was getting ready to go to work. And there was an 8.1 earthquake, wow, 11 miles off island in the South Pacific in the ocean. And man, that was incredible earthquake. That was the ticket for us to get off the island and come back to the States.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
But yeah, the chickens didn't show up that day, I think they knew something was coming.
Yeah, felt it. Yeah, that sixth sense, and I think all animals have it. That's how it's in their DNA. That's how they survive.
Yeah, somehow we lost that. We might have had that when we were.
I think we got soft. TV and television.
Yeah,
telephones.
That'll
telephones. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got this. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. No. Go ahead.
I've got a weird thing. Like it's almost like I can feel when they're around or something. Like I'll be watching TV with my wife, and
I know
we'll be sitting there,
and you'll jump up and run outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guess who else does that?
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I've jumped up off the sofa before, ran outside with my camera, took a picture of a sky full of nothing, and then go in and look at the picture, and there's a saucer in it.
That's wild. I'll jump up like wintertime or whatever. I'll put my jacket on or something and I just go out on the porch. And she's like, "Where are you going?" I'll be right back. I got to go check this UFO out.
Yeah. You ever get up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and go outside?
I have done that. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Normal people don't do that. You know?
That's awesome. I'm not alone.
No, not at all. I got up and I took a picture of the moon that was really pretty creepy. And it's got some, it looks like fireworks going off to the left of it and to the left of the moon. And Linda Moulton Howe, I sent it to her because she's got a photo analyst that works for her who can analyze these pictures. And he said, whatever this is, it isn't a plane. It's a series of 6 white lights traveling like in a formation. And I thought that's pretty cool. You know, I got up and I took the picture of the moon, and I didn't see anything else. And I went in the house and went back to bed. And woke up the next morning. I didn't even remember doing it until I found grass clippings in the bed that I had on my bottom of my feet. Then I looked at my phone and, you know, I'll be darned, there it was. Pretty weird.
That is. That's about all the time we got this week. Be sure to check out terrylovelace.com for all the latest information on Terry, where to buy his books. We were having so much fun with Terry, we just couldn't seem to let him go. So be sure to join us next week for part 2 of our conversation with Terry Lovelace. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to share it on our show, email us indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. God bless you guys. Take care. We'll see you next week.